Alright, so just wanted to do a bit of a follow-up video on the last showcase, this time with me actually talking through it, essentially. So, I'm working on pretty much what I call a vanilla plus mod pack, where the only things I add are stuff that I think should already be in the game. Like little refinements to world generation, which I'm sure you can see, and like the elytra that I showcase and physics stuff. Really nothing crazy, a little visual overhaul. Said it today. Just things like that. And so I've been working on it for a little bit, trying to figure out why it was, crashing and stuff like that. And I did manage to figure out it was memory leaks for the most part. And that was just kind of because it's the new versions, 1.26.1. And so the mods weren't particularly, compatible yet. That's actually why I'm using Voxy instead of Distant Horizons. Because I, personally, think that Voxy has more potential in these newer versions with Vulkan and stuff like that than Distant Horizons does. Just because of the performance numbers. So, like, I am on this island, and I'm at roughly 180-ish, sometimes like 200 when I stand still, pretty much. But usually I get around 120 on Distant Horizons. Don't really know why. I got it to work for a little bit with this mod, but it's just so much worse. Anyway, I've been running back and forth to show another thing I've done. I've added a pathway mod, so that way if you ever use the same path over and over, you'll actually start to wear out the grass and stuff around it to actually show where you've been and stuff like that. So if we, go over to a snowier area, I think there's one over here. Little showcase from last time was that in snowier areas, it's you leave footprints in the snow, like you leave a little trail, which I think that'd be cool for like a PvP server idea of like actually just hunting your friends or whatever. I think that'd be cool. But yeah, this really just kind of shows the world gen here and how much bigger it's gotten. The only thing I don't like is the reformed structures to match the bigger world gen, but I feel like that's something I can get over. But then I also added the waystones mod, the little teleportation thing you can do, which I don't think too many people will be like upset about, hopefully, because just even elytras make things, like even with elytras, going around places feels slow still. But anyway, here's a good example. We're walking, leaving little trails in the snow. Now this is actually part of a paid mod. You have to get this one from Patreon for the Physics Mod Pro, which is, it's like you get it forever is the funny part. Like the dude really just leaves the code open, but still go out and support it, obviously, so you can keep working on this for future generations of Minecraft. 'Cause this is just it's a really nice addition, I think. One thing this also does, it adds like a biome or two. There's volcanoes nowadays, which I think is neat. Just, I think it's volcanoes, and then there's like a Badlands one that's better than the current Badlands that are in Minecraft. Then we get up close, and yeah, this is part of the issue, is that even with a beefy computer, frames are sometimes, not frames, chunks sometimes don't load in fully properly, but you can still get your normal villages next to these big frickin' like castle type towns, which I do think that these are a nice, like, sort of fun addition, but I think they're a bit much for my taste personally. I'm not sure why exactly, but anyway, here it goes perfectly with the physics mod, actually, though, is that you can see the smoke coming out of stuff like this because of the... Well, yeah, you'd see that anyway, but physics mod makes it look a little better. You know, maybe I'm glazing because I had to pay money for it, but, you know, who wouldn't? Yeah, these big, elaborate structures, and I haven't actually explored these all too much. I've just been working on getting the pack set up in the meantime, so that I can start a server on Debian and stuff like that. But I really just wanted to get it going, and now it's mostly stable. There's gonna be issues where sometimes when there's new chunks loading in, like way over there, which we actually just saw one load in, that's kind of cool, way over there, or like over here, and stuff like that. If you go and like just gung-ho through those chunks to like force them to load, it's not going to be too pleased about it. It's gonna crash. And that's just because of how much kind of like power this pack takes up, unfortunately. This thing, even with my specs, 12900 KS and a 7900 XT, just devours my system resources. I had to allocate 16 gigabytes of RAM to stop it from just constantly bottoming out the frame rate because of using the swap space on the 60. But anyway, here you see one of the other issues. Sometimes it'll just unload a chunk or two. And it'll tell you this in chat on occasion. Like, it'll pop up in the chat just like, hey, chunk error over here. Don't touch that for a little while. As I'm flying towards it. Hopefully, you know, it figures itself out here in just a second. And then, you know, since we're reaching the end of this showcase, I kind of want to show you the settings I have going just to maximize performance and stuff like that. Since we're in a windy place, you know, the banners, they do the wind, all that fun stuff. And since the boat is, you know, in my inventory, I can show you that even on the like calmer waters, you still get the waves moving you around, which I think is a feature that should be built in because that's just cool. But yeah, so we get this going, all that fun stuff. Then let's take a dive into the settings. So there's physics settings. You'll want to enable most of those. There's one where it's like block collapse when you're like in caves and stuff like that. I think that's a anti-fun mechanic. I wouldn't do that one too much. But let's go to video settings. Just keep it at 16 chunks if you can. I have, you know, unlimited 1080p at 65 hertz, stuff like that, like crazy. Then we go fancy, yada 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 yada. Really, the stuff you want is the performance here. Because of the mod ImmediatelyFast, you want to keep the chunk updates on immediate, pretty much. And I set the threads a little while ago, but you're going to want to do as many threads as possible. That way you can just kind of get it in there. Then there's some other stuff here, like the CPU render head limit. Usually keep that, if you want like higher quote-unquote frame rate, I'd say keep it low. That way the CPU's just doing it on demand as opposed to constantly rendering new frames, which will just freak out your system a little bit. Then we have Voxy. This is the world generation thing, and Voxy just kind of only uses your performance cores if you're on Intel. I don't actually know what it does on AMD, but you can, you know, keep that to full as well. And then there's some other stuff in here that gets added in with a like Voxy generation mod, because how it usually works is that it'll only load in the chunks you tend to before. As we saw earlier, it will load in stuff like far away. Yeah, we just saw some it'll load in stuff far away, and you might be like, well, how'd you get it to do that? There's a mod that like makes it a server generation. And that kind of fixes the problem Voxy has of not loading in chunks automatically. So I think it's all very good additions. It's just, you know, the world is a lot, you know, bigger. So you might have difficulties going around it. Meeting up with buddies who live on the top of a mountain over here in the early game and stuff like that. You know, you get stuff like this, which is neat. I think it really just comes down to personal preference, and my personal preference is to have this kind of over-the-top world gen. Yeah, I'm gonna say that's about all. Got the recording here. Have a great night. See ya.